Flooring, from planning to installation, a comprehensive review. We are pleased to introduce our presenter, Daniel Ortiz, Technical Services Manager with Lititz Flooring, a Capri Collections company. Daniel is a 13-year veteran in the flooring industry. He began his career as an installer, and he has also served as a field supervisor, project manager, and vice president of operations. His interest lies in the technical side, leading him to his current position as Technical Services Manager for Lititz Flooring, a DBA established by Capri Collections. Daniel's involvement with FCICA dates back a decade, where he has served on several committees, including the SIM Committee, which developed the Certified Installation Manager Program, as well as the Board of Directors. Daniel's passion lies in educating architects, designers, vendors, and contractors to ensure product knowledge and successful installations. Welcome, Daniel. We're excited to have you. I'm going to turn the controls over to you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining me. So as the title of the webinar states, this is going to be on just what I found to be the best practices when it comes to a commercial flooring installation. We're going to go through it, everything from estimating and bidding to performing the work, and then, everything associated with actually closing out the project and getting paid. In order to have some structure to it, I've kind of broken it down into 3 phases. Pre-award, which is going to be everything obviously before you are awarded the contract. Post-award, which is everything you have to do during the project, and then post-completion, which is your closeout and everything you should do after you finish a job. So for pre-award, bidding is where obviously it's all going to begin. Your company might get bids through a couple different avenues. You could be on a bid list. You could have a past relationship with a contractor and they might reach out direct, or it could generate from something as simple as a online search. Whatever the case, it's going to be important to really look at the bid and see if it's something that makes sense for your company. There's a couple ways to do this and a couple things to consider. Obviously, you're going to want to consider your relationship with the customer. Is this a customer that you've done work with in the past? Is this a customer that you've had an issue with in the past? Is this a new customer? That's all going to kind of help you decide where your opportunity lies. Your relationship with your vendor is important as well. Obviously, that's who you're going to be purchasing this material through. So, you're going to want to make sure that it's something that you either have a price advantage or at least aren't going to get priced out right from the start. So you're going to want to explore that. Your ability to do the work is important as well. As many of you know, there's very specific installations out there, and if you don't really understand what you're bidding, not only can you underbid a project, but you could also be awarded a project and then not have the ability to perform the work. So it's really important to consider, and understand your limitations when it comes to bidding work. And then special requirements are important as well. Is it a government job? Is there specific insurance that you need? Is there background checks? Is it an off-hours project? All of that is important because it's all going to affect how you bid the work. And then lastly, your location. That's important because you might have, customers that you've dealt with locally and they want to have you do some work for them, maybe out of your state or something. And you got to really put some thought into that because obviously doing work, local and doing work a couple hours away, it presents a couple different, obstacles. One way that I've seen of doing this is just creating a metric system where you have a set of questions related to, your probability of winning the work, and then you give a a number value to how you answer each question. And then at the end of, your little form, you have a system where, if it scores a certain amount or higher, you pursue the job. And if it doesn't, you pass the opportunity. One thing is important is you're not going to want to spend a lot of time on jobs that you don't have an opportunity to win, because that's lost opportunity for jobs that you might have a better opportunity, and there's a cost associated with that. So once you decide you are going to bid a job, it's going to start with estimating. It's one of the most important parts of the whole project, because if it's not estimated correctly, it's going to be real hard to perform the work correctly. There's a lot of information that has to be reviewed. It's not as simple as just looking at a finished floor plan and creating a price. You're going to want to refer to the project specifications. There's going to be information in there regarding means and methods and material and attic stock requirements and floor protection requirements and floor prep requirements. There's a lot of information that's going to be communicated there that sometimes is supplemental to the project drawings, and then sometimes it's in contradiction of the project drawings. So this also gives you an opportunity to get clarity on that from your customer. Demolition drawings are important as well. Sometimes they get overlooked, but demolition drawings may show areas that, due to the demolition occurring in those areas, can create additional scope for you. And if you don't pay attention to that, it can be put on you, as the project drawings are part of the final contract, or many times an addendum or reference in them. You're going to be held to whatever's on those drawings. So it's important to review those demolition drawings. Wall assembly drawings. This one actually hits very close to home for me. We did a project probably about 10 years ago where the elevation plans on the drawings didn't show anything going on the walls. Now, there was a note on that drawing that referenced a specific wall assembly, and that wall assembly on the wall assembly drawings showed tile on that wall type, which meant that we owned wall tile in that entire area, which wasn't something that we had accounted for. So it's very important to make sure that you're looking at all of these drawings. Plumbing drawings is another important one. If you're doing tile in kitchen or bathrooms, there might be very specific ways that your product either ties into the plumbing assemblies or requirements in regards to waterproofing. It's important to look at those drawings to make sure that nothing's overlooked. And then throughout the project, there's a lot of other areas, whether it's the general notes, the keynotes, finished legends, finished schedules, even the door schedules sometimes show specifics to your work in regards to transitions. You're going to want to make sure you're looking at all these documents before you put together your final bid, because there is going to be some information in there that's related to you. This picture is actually, one of the estimators, where I used to work, and that's what you want your estimator screen to look like. You want them to be looking at every single aspect of that project and familiarizing themselves with it. Another important thing is just keeping track of the project drawings. Obviously look at this slide. This project went through 11 different drawing updates. It's important to make sure that whatever it is that you're bidding is in line with the most updated drawings. The worst thing is to go through, put time and effort into putting together an estimate, and then find out you're estimating something from a previous drawing. Most contractors are going to have some type of online software management that allows you to sign on, or it automatically generates emails when there's a drawing update. But it's important to keep track of that, because obviously, nothing's more frustrating than putting all that time and effort and find out that all those drawings are different now. So once that estimate's done, now you're going to want to work on putting your pricing together. This is where a true, I would say, this is kind of where a business development partner uses those relationships that they've developed to create the opportunity to be awarded the job. It's one thing to take an estimate and just put a bunch of numbers onto paper and create a price, but there's also a lot more associated with really using your relationships with your vendors, with your labor force, and making sure that you're nailing down the best pricing for this job. It's also an opportunity to go through and look at the project drawings and the specifications and see if not only if something was possibly missed, but also if there's an opportunity to cut back on material or labor, or just anything you can do to get that pricing down as much to where you can still successfully do the job but be more competitive. Another thing that I've found is extremely helpful is once you have your pricing, if you've submitted it, is actually sitting down with your customer and having what's referred to as a scope of work meeting, or scope. And you can review all the documents, make sure that your pricing matches what they're requesting you to price. It's also an opportunity to clear out any questions that might have not been answered during the estimating process. And it's a face-to-face opportunity to kind of establish a relationship and show your knowledge. Showing up to these meetings and having a really good understanding of the project shows that customer that you took your time, and that pursuing you as the installer is probably going to set them up in a good position for having a successful project. And it's important that the person at that project can make decisions. They might want to settle up right then and shake hands and award you the project. And there might be some tweaking associated with your pricing that has to be done, and you don't want to miss that opportunity. So these meetings are crucial to me. I think that it's a great opportunity to really close the deal. Now, once you've gone through that, obviously, if you're awarded the job, you're going to be given a contract. As many of you know, these contracts can range anywhere from a couple pages to hundreds of pages, and there's a lot of information in these contracts. And obviously, these contracts are legal documents, so you have to be very aware that you fully understand what you're signing. Some of these contracts contain information in regards to penalties and liability and insurance. So some of these contracts, it's important to have someone who is either part of a legal team or at least familiar with construction law take a look at and review. Some of the wording in there might be beyond what a flooring project manager understands or has any knowledge on. But most of these contracts are boilerplate. So if you have a few of them reviewed and you work with a couple consistent customers, you might only have to review the boilerplate section once or twice, maybe once every year, just to make sure nothing's changed. And after that, you kind of just glance through it when a contract comes through. But it is important to make sure that you fully understand what you're agreeing to, because it is a legal document, and once you sign it, you're bound to whatever's in that contract. Now, there's certain things in there that a project manager or an installation manager can review and can have an understanding of, and they definitely are going to want to review to make sure that it's in line. Obviously, your price, as simple as it sounds, you want to make sure that the price on that contract matches the bid that you're associating with that contract. There's plenty of times where there's been discrepancies there, and what the customer is purchasing doesn't really match up with what you thought they were buying, and it's a good opportunity to just clear that up. You might be picking up options that you hadn't included in the pricing. There's a couple different reasons it could change. That's why it's always important to review that price and make sure it's in line. your drawings need to be reviewed as well. You just want to make sure that, like I said before, that all the drawings that might have gotten changed or updated, you're going to want to make sure that whatever drawings are referenced in that contract match your latest estimate and the pricing that you created for those drawings. There could be some downtime between submitting pricing and being brought in for a scope review, and in that time there could be some updates to drawings. So you're going to want to make sure that none of that goes unaccounted for. It's also important to review the schedule. The schedule, I would say, many times it's generated. I'm not sure if it's generated by. I would say the flooring schedule on a project most likely isn't generated by someone with too much knowledge about flooring installation. So this is an opportunity to review the timelines given and review that schedule and communicate with your customer and let them know, hey, this isn't a realistic schedule, or maybe it does work, but either way, you're going to want to make sure you review it, because by signing that contract, you're committing yourself to those dates. And if they're unrealistic dates, now's the time to communicate that. I've actually seen contracts where the schedules our installation date is a year prior to me signing that contract. So sometimes information obviously gets just passed along, and it's not always cleared up. So it's important to look at that and make sure that it's in line with what you can provide. Warranties are important as well. There's your company might have a standard, labor and material warranty, but manufacturers might provide a different warranty. You're going to want to make sure that you review that and make sure that whatever warranty terms are set forth in that contract, most typically in the specifications, that you're willing to honor those. I've seen lifetime warranties on projects. Not something that I necessarily feel comfortable committing to. So it's important to look at that. Your scope of work. This is why that earlier meeting is so important, because when you have that scope review meeting, and many times you create a scope of work at that meeting, and there could be things that are referenced in the drawings and in the specifications, and then when you sit down and meet with them, they might opt out of some of those options. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of what it is they're purchasing, and then by putting that scope of work in your contract, you have another document where you can reference. Later down the line, this team might move on, and you might be dealing with a different, project manager or purchasing team or whatever, and that document will protect you from owning things that, were agreed upon that you didn't own. It's also important to know the change order procedure. On job, several things occur that create additional costs. So understanding what the procedure is to get paid for that cost is extremely important. As if not followed, your cost can be denied, and at that point, you're now affecting the project budget. And then the payment terms. Your contract will specify the payment terms, and you're going to want to take a look at those, because that's the bloodline for the job, and you're going to want to know what your billing is going to look like versus how soon you'll be paid for that, because you're going to have to balance that with material orders, with labor payments, with an array of things. So it's important to understand that and make sure that works. Another thing that I found beneficial is a turnover meeting. This meeting allows the person who estimated and priced the job to kind of hand it over to the team that's going to run the job. This meeting should allow both parties to walk away and I don't want to say not have to interact, but not have to re-communicate information. The business development partner at that time needs to go on and win new work, and the estimator needs to go estimate new work. So they need to be able to pass on this information to the team that's going to run it, and then walk away and not really think about it again. So for that, in these meetings, you're going to want to have a project manager, some type of field manager. Also, it's information that you're going to want to communicate to accounting, HR. There might be specific things in regards to compliance that HR might need to know, but it just allows that opportunity to to kind of have that separation between, now this work is awarded and now it needs to be managed. So, once that occurs, a couple things that need to happen right away is obviously submittals. Nothing should be ordered or can be ordered until it's been reviewed and approved by, your customer or an architect. And then in your contract, it's going to have a specific timeline that they're allowed to review those materials and before they return them to you. So you're going to want to get those submittals out as soon as possible. Until materials approved, you can't order it, and you might miss a time, a window of ordering material for it to arrive on a project. So submittals are extremely important to getting a job up and running. You also want to make sure that any compliance and enrollment that is necessary for the project is handled, immediately. But there's been occasions where this hasn't occurred and you show up to do the work and your guys aren't allowed on site because you haven't filled out the specific form. And this is not, it's downtime. It affects your schedule. You have loss of time for installers on site, so it affects your budget. It just creates a lot of issues. So you're going to want to make sure whatever the compliance required, whether it's, OSIP or CSIP or drug testing, whatever it is, that you're in compliance before you step foot on that job. And then material procurement. Obviously, you can't do anything without material. So you're going to want to make sure that you have that material. And we're going to talk a little bit later about a material purchasing plan and kind of what goes into purchasing material and planning material for a project. Your labor scheduling. If you have an in-house crew or if you do subcontract or if you do a combination of both, that's important to kind of decide that now, because if it's a subcontractor, you're going to want to, start engaging him in conversations. Obviously, they have to schedule themselves as well, so you're going to want to get on their radar. And then for in-house, you're going to want to start calculating, their production and how long it's going to take for them to do this work and if they can meet the schedule. And then logistics. You're going to want to consider, how much material you're going to be required to purchase and where you're going to store it and how you're going to get it into the building. So these are all things to consider, at least to have in at the front of your mind when you're starting this project, because it will, if not considered now, the day of installation is not the day to figure out how you're going to get the material into the building. So it's just things to consider. All right, so a material purchasing plan. So this is just, I found this beneficial for a couple reasons. You can do a few things. You can just order all the material at once, which I would say is probably not the best. If you do this, you're going to make sure you have to have a warehouse space available for this. You're also going to have to manage this material throughout, the period of the project. So might require moving it several times. You have an opportunity for damage, and you have to pay for this material. So it's important to understand when you'll need the material. So in order to do so, you have to understand the project schedule. Once you understand the project schedule, you can break it down by areas, what materials are needed and what dates, and then you can review that against the material lead time. Then you can begin to decide, you place orders for what materials and have them come in. Obviously you don't want to miss a date. You don't want material in your warehouse too soon, but you obviously don't want material in your house too late. So this kind of should help you go through that and have an understanding of when to place that order. It's important to consider production dates with this as well. Just because you call manufacturing, they say, oh yeah, we have that in stock. That doesn't mean that when you call next time to order it, that they're going to have it in stock. So you got to get clear on all that information prior to, as part of creating this plan. Another part of it is your budget. I mean, obviously, ordering material and getting material there's a price associated with that. So you're going to want to understand what that is, what your terms, what your vendors are, what your project payment terms are, and you're going to have to balance that. You're going to want to make sure that material is invoiced So, invoice, you might be invoicing the material goes into production, or you might be invoicing the material actually ships. Whatever the case is, you're going to want to make sure that as soon as you're being invoiced for that material, you're passing that invoice along to your customer. They might require some additional information. They might require pictures of the material. They might require a certificate of insurance for the material. Whatever it is, you got to want to make sure that's in line, because, if you miss a billing date with your customer, now your payment for that material can be pushed back, 45 days, 60 days in some cases, and now you're going to be left, holding the bill for that amount of time. So it's just important to consider that and compare it to itself. And you're going to want to consider your warehouse space. I mean, some of these projects require thousands of feet of material, and if you don't have the space for it, you're going to run into a problem. And you might be working on multiple projects, so it's important to make sure that material spends the least amount of time possible in your warehouse. I think a 2 to 4 week time frame is good enough. If you can have material show up and leave your warehouse within 2 to 4 weeks, you're probably in pretty good shape. But there's going to be instances where this isn't possible. Couple reasons is, you might need to preserve a lot. You might have an area that is going to be installed in phases, but all the material needs to be ordered at once because you have to keep the same lot for the entire area. So that's going to require you to purchase all the material at once. There might be special pricing that you got requiring you to order all the material at once. There might be holidays that affect the production of the material. So if you don't order it all now, you might have enough for your first and second phase, but your third phase would be delayed. So that's another reason. And then your customer might just want it. I've had customers say that they just want the peace of mind of knowing that all the materials in hand and ready to go. And if this is the case, in some cases, you're able to go for them or to them for funding for this, for additional warehouse space or, a storage space. So those are things to consider and make sure you're talking to your customer about. And then project delays. You might plan everything perfectly, and then your installation day shows up and the job site's not ready. So this now material that was scheduled to leave your warehouse is now going to sit for an extended period of time. So these are all reasons that 2 to 4 week period might not work, but there's ways to work with it even when these things occur. So a couple things you can do is you can talk to your vendor. Vendors sometimes have much larger warehouse space than flooring contractors, and they might be willing to work with you. They want the material ordered, but they might be able to deliver to you in phases. So this is that's something that might work. There might be an additional cost associated with the delivery fee, but you just got to weigh that against what it would look like to have all that material at once, or pay this additional amount to have it delivered in phases. It's something you just got to consider and weigh one against the other and make your decision. You can also talk to your customer. Your customer might have a large warehouse where they'd be willing to store the material, or they might allow you to store the material on site. I mean, there's risk involved with doing this. Obviously this material now isn't, exactly visible to you. So there's some things you're going to want to do in addition. If this is how you proceed, you're going to want to make sure you're doing, material checks on a scheduled basis, and you're going to want to make sure that you have a full understanding of what's occurring in that material. Just because they're storing it for you either on site or in their warehouse doesn't mean they're necessarily accepting the responsibility for the material. So it's important to discuss that and understand what that looks like. You also might need to get a temporary additional storage. I mean, there's been cases where a customer is so adamant about all the material being purchased where they've said, listen, just pass on the cost to us. This is fine, but in doing so, you got to make sure you understand all the costs involved of doing this. You might have to hire additional personnel. You might have to get additional, you might have another forklift. You might have to transport material between your warehouses. Just a lot of things to consider, and just it's important to make sure that when you do, if you do agree to do this, and then you provide a price, that you're considering everything involved, every cost involved in what you're signing up for. And it's important to know that when these things occur and they're out of your control, look at your contract, because there might be language in there about what you're allowed to do when this occurs. You might be able to, like I said, submit a change order for stored material, or maybe a change order for delay. Whatever the case, just it's beneficial to read through it, because you might be able to recoup some of this money. So once all your materials cleared up, obviously now you're going to want to make sure you have your labor. You want to make sure you have your installers ready and geared up to do the work. And typically there's two forms of installation labor. There's in-house labor. You might have a crew that works directly for the company. These are direct employees. There's pros and cons to this. The pros is obviously that their production affects the budget. If they get installation done quicker than anticipated, they're generating profit in the job. By the same means, if they take longer, now they're creating additional costs to the project. So you got to understand your installer's strengths and weaknesses, and make sure that you're putting them on projects where they're going to generate revenue. In-house labor can typically be more reliable. These are guys that show up and sign in, and they're your direct employees. So you're going to have a little bit more control over them. You're going to be able to know when they didn't show up, or know when they're late. So that adds a little peace of mind when it comes to having installation scheduled. They're also an investment. You can get these guys trained to do a couple different installations, and the more they know, the better they're going to perform, and the more money they're going to make your company. So you can look at them as an investment. You're also going to have a better touch on quality control with them. I mean, obviously as your direct employees, they're going to have some understanding that their work is associated with their pay raises and their bonuses. So they're going to want to make sure that they're providing the best install possible for you and your company. And they're more likely to look out for the company. Whether it's the sense of materials, not wasting materials, keeping track of adhesive, simple things that at the end of the job can amount to to an expense if not tracked. Some of the cons are, obviously there's an overhead, there's a cost to having these installers, whether it's vehicles, vehicle maintenance, uniforms, tools. So there is a cost associated with this that typically built into your overhead, but it's something to consider. With in-house labor, as silly as it sounds, you got to manage personalities. There might be guys that don't like working with each other, or there might be guys that that they might be having a hard time working together. So there's a little bit more personal management involved with having in-house installers, where you don't really have that when you're dealing with a subcontractor. You also might have limited crew capacity. Your guys might not be able to you might have a job that you need 40 installers on site, but you don't have enough work to sustain 40 in-house installers all the time. So there might be projects that they won't be able to do, or they might have to do in supplemental with a subcontractor labor. And then there's a cost increase. Obviously you give these guys raises, so your labor, typically your price for your labor stays pretty consistent, but then your cost, year after year, your cost gets a little bit more expensive. So that's something to consider with in-house. Same thing with a subcontractor. good things about one of the pros of subcontractors, you have a set budget. This guy, you come to an agreement in regards to payments per square foot or whatever, and maybe per area, maybe per room, maybe per square foot, but whatever that is, that doesn't change. He can take a day to do it, he can take 20 days to do it. You're still going to have to pay him the same amount. So that allows you to kind of plan things out a little bit better. There's really no overhead to them. You might give them a couple of tools, maybe some shirts, some vests, but there's not really any overhead associated with subcontractors. You also have a more direct line of communication. You're typically just dealing with, the foreman or the, subcontractor company owner. So you don't really have to manage all these additional personalities. And you have a bigger crew capacity. You might have a job where you can have 5 different subcontractor crews working on it once, and you don't have to keep them sustainably working for constantly. They could work, 50 guys at once for 2 months, and then they might not work the next month, and you don't have to worry about always placing them on projects. They can be difficult to manage. They're not a direct employee, so technically, they are allowed to set their own schedule. Obviously, you're going to want to be very clear about the requirements of the project with them from the beginning, but you do have a little bit less command over them in that sense. Quality control can sometimes not be the best. They're getting paid by the piece, so obviously the more they install, the more money they get, so that could make them tend to work a little faster and maybe not put as much attention to the details as they should. Another thing that, is sometimes hard is just administrative capabilities. There's, like I said, some of these jobs have a lot of pay work associated with them, whether it's certified payroll reporting or, insurance, all of that. And most times, or if not always, this is attached to you getting payment from your customer. So a hold up on them not submitting information to you can now hold up money that's due to you. So that's something to consider. Where with in-house, most of the information you already have because they're your direct employees. And then scheduling, if you have a set schedule with your subcontractor and then there's a delay on that project, he might have considered that he was going to working on there for, a preset schedule that you and him already discussed. So he might have already scheduled himself past that schedule for something else. So if your project gets delayed, now you have a scheduling conflict with him, and you might have to look for a different labor, or it just creates a little bit more coordination that needs to occur. Like I said, that it's important to meet with your subcontractors. I would say as soon as you get this job, at least put it in their mind, and then have them come in, look at the project with them, look at the timeline, the schedule, the materials they're going to be installing, and everything that they need to provide to you. That way they're clear, if it's something that they're interested in taking on. You can also, take this time to negotiate and come to a price agreement, and execute a contract with them. That way, you come to a formal agreement, and everyone is clear on what's involved in the project. Once the job's going to start, I find it, about 30 days out, you're going to want to go visit that job. Some of these jobs have on-site meetings. That's a good opportunity to start showing up about 30 days in advance. You can review your substrate, you can review the conditions, you can actually make sure the project's tracking to complete at the, per schedule. I also recommend that around the 2-week time, you go to the job site and you bring the foreman or the installation, head installer that's going to be on that site and review the job with him. This is when you can review the logistics of the job. Where's he going to bring material in through? Where's he going to bring, where he has to go get water, where he has to, throw the trash away. This is all important for him to know in advance. These aren't things that you're going to want to be figuring out the day of the install, where he's going to store material and how the phasing is going to be. are you going to have to do 2 rooms in a day? You got to do 8 rooms in a day. This will let your guy or your installer understand, you know, how many installers he needs, or, you know, what his does he need to work extended hours, all of this. So this is important. It also gives you the opportunity to kind of introduce him to the team on site for your customers. So they you know, the installation day shows up, it's not just some random person turn up to install. They already know who this person is, and that can go a long way. You know, during that 2-week prior visit, you know, that you might have in your contract to do RH readings, or, you know, review substrate, anything that needs to be done. That's a good time, because a lot of times in your contract they'll have a specific date where they tell you, you know, 2 weeks prior or 3 weeks prior, you need to let us know of any issues that may impede you from doing your work. So you're going to want to pay attention to that, and then you're going to want to make sure you're there reviewing it. These pictures are all jobs that I was told were ready. You know what I mean? We have walls that were out of flatness. We have windows that weren't completed. We have substrates where they removed an existing flooring and it created a whole new scope of work. And then we have temporary heat units that aren't even plugged in. So this is all things that you're going to want to review, and then you're also going to want to document and communicate these to your customer as well as internally. One thing that I've seen make a huge difference is that first day on site, you're going to want to have someone from your company, you know, direct company representatives there for the first day. This is going to allow for any hiccups that might occur to be solved immediately. You know, you want someone there who can make decisions and that can keep any delays from occurring. You know, this is essentially your introduction to your customer, and you're going to want to make sure that first day isn't a disaster. So I found it very beneficial to have a direct company representative in site.
Daniel?
Yeah.
Daniel, we're going to interrupt you just a second. Your connection is a little off. Can you just pause for 1 second? And Billy, can you instruct Daniel what to do? Daniel, review the moderator comments, please.
Okay.
Stand by, everybody. We're reconnecting Daniel. 1 moment.
Hello, is that any better?
Yes, keep going, Daniel.
Okay, all right. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I'm sorry. Now I have to kind of find out where I was. Okay. So yeah. So like I said, that first day, that's kind of the introduction. So you're gonna want to make sure that you are prepared to mitigate any issues that can present themselves. All right. So once you're installing, a few things to consider. Obviously, your quality control. You're gonna want to have a designated person that's in charge of keeping track of what's going on the job and making sure that you're on schedule and that you're installing things per the project requirements, and that you're providing a quality installation. This can be a field supervisor. This could be a predetermined quality control manager, but whoever the person is, they have to have the authority to not only stop any work that is out of or not in accordance with the project documents or the quality, but also direct on how to proceed and find solutions for what's occurring. This should all be done with some part of quality control plan. Your company might already have one, but essentially in that plan, it should just establish, roles and responsibilities for each person that's part of the team, and then how things should be communicated and kind of go through the chain of command. But this is something that can avoid you coming to the end of the job and having a huge issue. Material management on site is also something that definitely needs to be tracked. In instances where you have to bring all the material to the job site, you're gonna want to make sure that you always know what's going on with that material. There can be a few, it can be lost or stolen, but there's a few things you can do to make sure that if that does occur, that you're aware of it. One thing I've found beneficial is just making sure you have an end of day and a beginning of day material log. You have your storage area on site, and at the end of the day, just track everything. Have a form where you fill out all the material, and it could be where you're just inputting a pre-filled out form where you're just inputting numbers, and you have a count at the end of the day. Then in the morning, you just confirm that count. If something's off, instantly. And this might not necessarily mean that you're going to get, reimbursed for that lost material, but at least you'll know. And then you know that you have to put in motion a plan to either reorder that material or confirm that you have enough still to finish the project. But that's when you're going to want to know that is instantly. You don't want to get to the end of the job and say, wait, I'm 30 boxes short, and then have no clue when they disappeared or why. Misplaced material is a big one as well. Your guys, your guys at the end of the day just went through, installing is very, it's a physical activity. So at the end of the day, they might be tired. They might have a couple pieces left over in each room, and they might tell themselves, oh, you know what, I'll pick it up tomorrow. Or, I didn't finish this room. I need that material tomorrow. The problem is that project might have an after hours cleanup crew or something that, someone who that material may occur to as trash. So you might be losing a good amount of material there. So it's always important that at the end of the day, the last activity should be walking that job site and then, moving any additional material or material that's in not designated areas into your designated storage area. And then just confirming your estimate. I mean, you might get to the job site. You might get to the job site. You might get all the material that your estimate said you need 30 boxes for this room, and then you get to that room and you're 2 boxes short. That's when you're going to want to know that, because you're going to be able to communicate that to your customer. At that point, you might be entitled to additional costs for that if it doesn't match the project drawings. But at minimum, then. Once again, you don't want to go through an entire floor and find out that, each room had 1 or 2 additional boxes, because at the end of that project, that can be detrimental to you completing your project on time. Additional work. I mean, obviously, as I mentioned before, there's always going to be, or most always going to be, additional work that occurs on site. You're going to want to make sure you have a very clean way and clear way of communicating and documenting that. The contract might have specific language of what you're to do, but your company should also have a very specific way of how you document that. Important things that I've found that need to be on that are obviously the date, the description of the work that's occurring, the location of the work, what material and labor were used, who told you to do the work, and then the person who did the work, as well as the person who approved the work physically. That way, come to the end, if there's any discussion as to why that was done, all that information is already there and signed for. A lot of times they'll want to negotiate change orders or clear out change orders at the end of the project, and in that time, team members may have come and that PSA for getting reimbursed additional costs for that. Also, documenting your work that you completed. Many times, obviously, you can see, this is a floor we put down, a very intricate installation, and, they haven't, painted the walls, they haven't painted the walls, so there's a lot of work that's going to occur after that here.
Daniel?
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you again. Just refresh your browser one more time.
Yes. Okay, am I back on?
Back on, you sound great. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So document your work as you complete it. This is a room that we came back, a couple weeks later, and it was trashed. There was, drywall mud and paint all over the floor. And, we were able to go and say, listen, we turned this over, exactly how we were supposed to. All these cracks in these tiles and all this paint on this tile, this isn't something we did. This happened after the fact. But the only way you can do that is if you document it as you complete it. And you're going to want to make sure that you're either time stamping and day stamping those pictures or communicating at the moment that same day, sending an email to the customer, to your team internally, and making sure everyone kind of is on the same page in regards to your progress. It also lets the customer know in the back of their mind, oh, perfect, they completed this area as scheduled. And it gives them that assurance that you're keeping up with the project schedule as well. And then your punch list. Your punch list is the way I see punch list is kind of a three-phase deal. You're going to want to manage that installation as it goes. You're going to want someone from your company walking that every day or every other day and dealing with any discrepancy he sees or anything that he doesn't believe will meet the quality and addressing it instantly. And then as an area gets completed, you're going to want to go through and do a full quality check. You're going to want to mark anything that needs to be changed, and then you're going to want to put a time frame associated with making those corrections. That's important because marking it and just letting it sit at one point can become overwhelming when you have such a large punch list where now it's affecting your production schedule. So you're going to want to make sure that typically I like punch lists to be done between 28 and 48 hours. And then you don't got to think about it anymore. You know it's done. And then your owner's going to have their punch list. And if you've done your diligence with with your reviews during the installation and then your, pre-owner punch list, it should be very minimal. The closeout of the project is important as well. Like I mentioned before, there's always a good amount of paperwork associated with these jobs, especially if it's a government job, and your payment is going to be directly tied to turning that information in. So you're going to want to make sure you fully understand what's associated with that closeout, and that when the project, and even prior to the project completion, that you have that ready to go. Because nothing's worse than having a successful project and everyone happy, and then you not being funded for the work over paperwork that wasn't completed. I also think it's beneficial to have a completion meeting. Meet up with the team internally and discuss what worked and what didn't work and what improvements can be made. And also meet with your customer. This shows them that you truly do care about servicing them, and you do want to make sure that whatever you're providing them, that it's exactly what they want. So this is an important piece. A lot of times we finish these jobs and we want to move right on to the next, and this can be a huge piece in making sure that the next job is just as, if not more successful as that, the one we just completed. And then you might have built relationships with that customer or specific people within that organization. You gotta foster those relationships. Ask them where they're going next. Find out what project they're going to go work on. Because many times, if they had a successful project with you, they're going to want to make sure that they bring you with them. And sometimes they have, some say in who gets awarded the project. So it's important to always make sure you keep those relationships. And then lastly, just market yourself. There's a lot of, social media provides, a couple different free platforms where you can make yourself visible. You can show work that you've installed. You can showcase yourself. You can showcase your company. Maybe do some employee spotlights, but anything to keep yourself relevant and in people's minds. This is going to make sure that it's just one of the things that when they're thinking about awarding a project, they could think about, oh man, I remember that beautiful picture of that. This company posted a month ago of the same product that we have on this project. And it could just be that little push they need to kind of call you in and sit down with you. So that is the culmination of the presentation. I think now we're going to do a Q&A session, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, thank you so much, Daniel. So attendees, if you have any questions, please enter them in the Q&A on the left hand of your screen. We have a couple questions, so I'm going to start, and then that'll give you ample time to enter in your questions. First question is, what happens if a customer is demanding that you proceed with an installation that does not meet the product requirements? For example, acclimation.
I'm sure we've all dealt with this one. I mean, this is an opportunity for you as the contractor to engage your manufacturer. You know, let them know you don't have to be, I don't want to say the bad guy, but obviously manufacturers have very specific instructions for their product, and it's not stuff that they just make up. It's stuff that's put in place to make sure that their product performs as successfully as possible. So if someone's directing you to do something otherwise, just make that connection. Have a manufacturer come to the job site and have them explain it. Sometimes as a contractor, it can begin to sound like an excuse and they don't want to hear it, but it's going to be a lot harder for them to ignore, you know, the manufacturer's rep saying, hey, this doesn't work, you can't do this. So I think that, you know, there's a great opportunity in FCICA to make those connections with those people and make sure you have that person you can call when something like this occurs. I would say that it's something you definitely want to rely heavily on your manufacturers on.
Next question, what happens if you are forced to buy material in different lots?
Once again, this is something that you're going to want to involve your manufacturer. You're going to want to find out, you know, how off the shades are, if there is a big difference in lots, and then you're going to want to look at the drawings and find out, you know, what quantities of each different shade or lot they have, and see how you can work them in your project. You know, this might require adding borders in somewheres, or maybe adding transitions in certain areas, something just to split up the different lots. But I would say that, you know, when this occurs, it's really up to you to present the customer with, you know, solutions, and then have them decide if they want to proceed that way or not. Typically when this occurs, it's because they need material and they don't have enough time to wait for a full production, or maybe the production maybe the material they need exceeds the production limit. So you can present a couple different options to where the customer can then make a decision of what they want to do.
Okay. Another question. We have issues getting compliance documentation from subcontractors. How do you assure they turn in documentation in a timely manner?
This is why it's important to meet with them, you know, prior to you know, essentially signing a contract with them, and you're going to want to explain all that to them. You're going to want to let them know everything that they're going to be required to give you before, you know, they can get paid. You know, tying this to their payments is a great way to make sure this happens, because, you know, obviously they're going to want to get paid, and if they have a clear understanding of what is required for them to get paid, it's probably in their best interest to make sure that they're doing that. So I would say being clarity and, you know, associating it or at least tying it to their payment are two, you know, really good ways to make sure that you get this information.
Okay. We have not a question, but one final comment from one of our attendees who said, estimators should know to read through all concrete specs, drawings, as well as electrical. It wasn't necessarily a question, just a comment.
Absolutely. But I would say you would be surprised, but absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. We've got one more question here, or a comment. The presentation was great with excellent information. Thank you. My question is more administrative. Are you going to have handouts or the presentation sent to the attendees? That will be, the presentation will be available on the FCICA educational webinar, or webinar listing, yes. So Elena, you can follow up with me if you need. And I think that's it. There are no more questions or comments. So unfortunately, we've run out of time. And I just want to make a few announcements, and that is SIMS, you may now navigate to the Submit Credit tab to receive credit. Please note that you must be signed into the educational platform for this feature to work. If you have any issues, please let me know. And I just want to thank you, Daniel. If you want to make some final comments, Daniel, and then that would conclude our webinar.
No, just thank you all for being a part of it. And I think my information was shared. If not, if anyone has any questions, I can share my information, and they're welcome to call me.
Great. Yeah, and I can supply the information or the contact information for Daniel to any of the attendees. So if there aren't any more questions, then on behalf of FCICA, thank you, Daniel, for presenting today's webinar. This is the conclusion of the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.